Hello and welcome to an episode of Notion Bonsai, and in this bonsai video I'm going to be doing some autumn pruning of my Ficus bonsai, just giving them a little prune back and setting them up for the growing season in the coming spring. Alright, so as you can see, these are the 5 ficus trees that we're going to be working on in this video today. I have worked on these ficus trees in previous ficus videos, so if you would like to check out how these trees were developed to where they are today, I'll leave a link to the playlist of these trees in the description of this video. Now, if you're a beginner to bonsai, you may be wondering, Adam, why are you doing some pruning on trees during autumn? Surely you should leave the trees alone during this time just to let them go dormant. In bonsai, or just with trees in general, there are 2 types of tree. Deciduous, like Japanese maples, oaks, apples, pears, any tree that loses its leaves for the dormant season. So as you can see with this Japanese maple, it is now losing its leaves for the winter. All the energy in this tree is beginning to move down into the roots, and the tree is more or less just having a break for the winter as it gets colder. Just look how easy these leaves are coming off. And then there's also evergreen trees like junipers, pines, which don't lose their foliage, like needles or juniper scale-like foliage during the dormant season. There are some exceptions from the deciduous and evergreen trees. For example, the azalea would be classed as a semi-evergreen as it loses some of its leaves in the dormant season. But just in general, there's 2 types of tree. And the ficus, what we're working on here today, this is an evergreen tree, meaning it doesn't really lose its leaves in winter. Occasionally, ficus do drop some yellow leaves throughout the year, but this is just a natural shedding process as it gets rid of the old leaves and makes space for new fresh leaves that can better photosynthesize on the tree. But what makes the ficus different from an evergreen that's outdoors? The outdoor evergreen trees go dormant. They have a period of reduced growth where they aren't pushing out foliage anymore, so in a way these do go to sleep for the winter. But with the ficus, because we have these indoors and they're in a warm environment, they don't really go dormant. Sometimes if it is cold in your home, you may notice a period of reduced growth, kind of like the outdoor evergreens. But generally speaking, ficus will continue to grow all year round, so it's okay to prune these at this time. Also with the ficus, I have noticed, just like all the other outdoor trees, in spring the ficus does get a growth spurt. It just seems to get more energy as it gets more sunlight at the beginning of the growing season. So by pruning it now in autumn allows the tree enough time to recover and prepare, so when it gets that growth spurt it can grow more efficiently, so it's not trying to recover from a pruning we did in early spring. The tools that we'll be using in this video today are some twig cutters, branch cutters, wire cutters, tweezers, root pruning shears, and some gin pliers. And as always, if you are just new to bonsai and you're a complete beginner, you don't need all of these specialized bonsai tools. You can get by with just a cheap pair of garden scissors or even some secateurs. You just want to make sure that whatever scissors that you are using are clean and sharp. Clean so we don't introduce any bacterial or fungal infections to our trees, and sharp because a nice sharp pair of scissors in bonsai will give you a much cleaner cut. And the last tree I was working on off camera was a pine. So these scissors are now covered in sap and they're quite sticky. I'm going to show you guys how to clean your scissors real quick. So when it comes to just quickly cleaning off some rust or sap that is built up on your bonsai tool, there's a few different methods that I like to use just to clean them. If I have time, I will put the scissors into some nice warm soapy water, give them a deep thorough clean, maybe even scrub them with a toothbrush, try and get off that old sap. I wouldn't really advocate for using a wire brush as harsh as this, because if we go at this on our tool, we will more than likely leave scratches on the scissors. The handiest way to do it is to get one of these. This is known as a cremate, and these ones are now available on my store at notionbonsai.com. This is just a bonsai tool cleaning block. So if I open this here, when it comes to using these blocks, I've seen some people dip them into camellia oil. It actually says this on the block. Apply a few drops of camellia oil or light tool oil. Personally, I don't really like to use camellia oil. You can if you wish to, because it's a safe oil for trees. But just personally, I have found a little bit of water also does the trick for me. So I'm just going to wet the end of this cremate, give it a scrub. And as you can see, it really doesn't take long to get the tool nice and clean from sap. A little bit here, as you can see, that's pretty clean. Let's do the other side. So again, just quickly give it a couple of rubs, and then that side. So that's probably my favorite way of doing it. So you guys were asking in the comments how I clean my tools. there you have it. So starting off with this first tree, this is a Ficus Microcarpa. Whoops. This is a Ficus Microcarpa. And now that this cutting has grown, I want to begin thinking about a front for this tree. There's somewhat of a scar on this side back here. So I think for me, just to have the tree looking nice, this would be quite a nice front here. I also like the movement that this tree has under the leaves. So I'm going to begin doing some defoliation here, just removing some of the leaves that's in here, preventing me from seeing what's going on. And if your tree is in really good health like this, doing a defoliation by taking off some leaves is completely fine. I'm only doing a partial defoliation, but even in some ficus, you can do an entire defoliation where you remove every leaf the tree has. Because I want to repot this tree today also, I'm not going to completely defoliate the whole tree and leave it with nothing, because a defoliation on a tree can be a little bit stressful, and a repot in itself is a little bit stressful. So by doing both might risk the health of the tree. So I'm going to do a partial defoliation here and then repot the tree. So already this is what is known as handlebar branches, with branches directly opposite each other. If I keep both of these branches, whenever they grow and thicken, it'll swell this area quite a lot and we will get what's known as inverse taper. So already I can see this is a decision I have to make. I'm going to remove this one simply for the fact that below this one we have such a nice little one right here. So let's cut this off. Already that's looking so much better. On the trunk here, these two branches are quite close together, so I'm going to remove this one in the middle. And now for this top section, we have nice movement and taper at the bottom of the tree here. From this point to this point, it's more or less all the same thickness. I think as this tree grows over the next coming years, it will only look better and better. If you wish to, you can take cuttings. With ficus, generally speaking, if you place these into some water, wait a few weeks or months, depending on the species, it should root into the water. And you can take that from there, transfer it into some compost or soil, and it should do pretty well from there. Alternatively, you can use either a rooting powder or a rooting gel. You just want to make sure that whatever rooting powder or gel that you use has the active ingredient IBA. This is known as indole-3 butyric acid, and it mimics the natural auxin hormone found in stems like this. As soon as we sever it from the tree and we stick it into the soil, the stem begins sending its auxins down to the base of the cutting, and when enough of them accumulate right down here at the base, the cells will reprogram themselves from branch cells, from it being a branch on a tree, into root cells, and then from there it will begin to send out roots. So instead of the little stem spending all its energy trying to send all this down, we take the synthetic form, IBA, add the hormone to the bottom, and it can get to work converting the cells to root cells pretty much right away. So to root this little cutting, I'm going to be using this rooting gel. This is one of the newest products on my store. I'm just going to make a little pilot hole. So as you can see, this sticks onto the cutting really easily. That's pretty much ready to go in here. And then you just want to make sure that this cutting's not going to move. So I really like to secure it down with my thumbs like this. And that is good to go. So to repot this tree, I'm going to start by just taking it out of the pot. So I'm just going to take a chopstick and just begin loosening up the old soil. We're aiming for a nice radial root growth. And in bonsai, this is known as the nibari. And when I work with a chopstick like this, I'm just working outward from the trunk. I never want to cross over like this because that could tear roots that I want to grow laterally. So always working outward from the trunk. There's a big winding root here. You can see it winds the whole way around. I really need to deal with that. Then I'm just loosening the soil on the side like this, and there's another winding root here at the bottom. You can see goes the whole way around. The drainage mesh has been eaten alive by the roots. I need to cut this off because that's definitely not going to be used. Look at all of that. So this big winding root begins right here. So let's cut that off. So now we're getting something that I'm happy with. I'm just going to mist these roots because they're a little dry, and you want to make sure all your roots are nice and moist as you work on them. And I'm just going to cut off any roots that's a little bit too long. And if I put it into the pot it was in previously, as you can see, the nibari and root spread is only going to go as far as the side of the pot, and it will go down and probably circle around just like these other ones have here. So this is a really good learning experience. You always want the rim of the pot to be slightly larger than the root mass you're putting the tree into. And because this tree's still in training, I've just opted for this blue flower pot. It's got plenty of room around the edges. The holes on the bottom of this flower pot are quite big, and I think if I put this substrate straight into that, it would fall through. We really don't want our soil falling out, so I'm just going to take some of this mesh tape, cut little lengths of that, and just place that into the bottom of here. That way our soil will not fall out. I'm going to take a little bit of soil out, mound it up in the center like that. That way when we sit the root ball on top of this, there's no air pocket under the root ball. Now moving on to this ficus. This is another Ficus Microcarpa. So far I've liked the idea of this being a twin trunk, but the more I look at this every day in my kitchen, the more I realize that this, personally, to me, it isn't really appealing anymore. So we can cut back to the small one, have the tree like that, really small, or we can cut this one off and have that as the tree. I'm really not in any rush with this tree, so even if I wanted to, I could leave this small one, but I think proportionally it makes more sense for that side to be the leader there. So I've taken that off. Then I'm just cleaning up the cut with these branch cutters. Now I'm going to remove one of these. I'm going to remove the thicker one here. And I think that looks pretty good. That's all I'm going to do with this for today. I really like the movement. Now it's thick, thinner, thinnest. This one, as you can see, is a twin trunk bonsai. Both trunks of this one emanate from the base, which I am a lot happier with. I think it looks more natural. And with this tree, I'm going to do a full defoliation. It's super healthy. It's got lots of leaves. So I'm just going to go along, pluck out all of these leaves. Then we can see a lot more of what's going on. We do defoliation in bonsai like this. First of all, if we want to see more of a branch structure of a tree, and secondly, if you were to defoliate a deciduous tree, for example, like a Japanese maple, sometimes this is done in order to get a second crop of leaves in the same growing season. The second crop of leaves is actually smaller than the first. So if you have a bonsai and you know it's going to be in an exhibition or a show that year, you could even do a defoliation or partial defoliation in order to get the tree to look a lot more miniature. But it is crucial that the tree is extremely healthy and on the energy positive side before we go and take away all of its energy sources, because if you think about it, all these little leaves that's on the tree is their solar panels. So if we come along and take all them away, it's going to take the tree a little while to recover. It's going to need some energy behind it to push out more leaves. And if the tree is already in bad health and you take away its only source of being able to get energy from the sun, you're surely setting the tree up for a disaster. If I follow this up, I really like the taper and movement that's going on here. I think if I cut this top one off, I want this side of the tree all to flow in this direction. So this side is significantly thicker than the other side. It sort of has that Y shape at the top here. I don't like how this and this are the same thickness. So I'm just going to take off this branch, and that's all I'm going to do to this tree for today. Moving on to this next tree. This is a Ficus Benjamina, and this particular variety has nice small leaves. This is also known as a weeping ficus because its leaves tend to want to weep downward. This is probably one of my favorite of all ficus species because they grow so fast. All of the trunks of these trees have now been successfully fused at the base. As I spin this around, you can see a branch right in here growing towards the center of the planting. That opens that up a little bit more. For me, this is the front. I've put in a little quartz crystal at the front of this. That way I know which side is the front, because from this angle you can see all the trunks. I'm going to do what's known as directional pruning, and that is pruning the tree back to a branch or leaf that's growing in the direction that you want the tree to grow into. So if I cut this right here, this branch here will become the leader of this trunk, and the tree will grow that way, which I want. You can really just control how you want a tree to grow just by clip and grow. And even with this branch that's growing in towards the center of the planting, I'm just going to take that off. So we've got everything fanning out this way. With this one I'm going to do the same, but I'm going to prune it back down to here. So this will become the leader. We can just shorten this, that way all the energy goes into this one. With this next one, I think if I shorten this to here, and then I prune this down to this little branch, that creates a nice bit of taper there. We're just pushing the growth back to try and keep this small. This is somewhat of a tricky one because if you look right in here, it splits. We've got that Y shape that we don't want. And this section of it is growing on the inside towards the center. Again, pruning to a branch that's growing on the outside like this. And finally, this last trunk has a branch growing towards the center here. Get rid of that. And we can just take this down in height to here. The leader of that's going to be over here. I could take this even lower, down to here. This would be a nice leader. because I don't want all the trunks to be the same size. A little bit of variation is a good thing. And now moving on to the final tree, this is another Ficus Benjamina. This one hasn't been pruned in quite some time, and as you can see, it's put on a lot of growth all over. The last time I pruned this tree, I pruned it back pretty hard, and I pruned it for one main reason, and that was to create taper and movement on the trunk. You can see right around here, this is where I pruned it last. I chopped off the leader of the tree, and then this portion of the trunk was allowed to become the new leader. The same thing happened here with this one. As you can see, we've got this nice angular movement, and you can see a little bit of the cut putty that I put on here last. Around here you can see it also, and you can see here on these trunks where I didn't cut, there isn't really any angular movement on them where you would see with this one. So although when I pruned this last it did look quite bare and sort of bad looking, now that the tree has grown, you can see all of that pruning back wasn't in vain. It was to give this tree character and movement in this area right here. I'm not really in any rush with this tree to get it to look good right now. I would much rather this tree looked bad every 2 years when I prune it back hard, letting it grow, pruning it back, letting it grow, and then over them years we get this incredibly interesting movement on the trunk where it goes one way, it has been cut, it goes another way, it has been cut, and I'm going to cut this tree right here. So we've cut off quite a lot here, as you can see. And now this little branch, just like the last time we did down here, this will continue on and become the new leader. Here we've got some branches growing on the inside of the planting towards the center of everything, so let's just get rid of them. You cut off all of this, and remember, all of this wasn't in vain. This was to thicken this little portion of the trunk. And then at that, I want all of the energy going into this apex, so I'm just going to remove this little lower one here. I'm just simply going to cut it down to this little short one, and then whenever this becomes longer, I'll cut it back and refine this edge. And that's all I'm going to do with this tree for today. On that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. It really helps out the channel with the YouTube algorithm. And please let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Perhaps there is something you would have done differently with some of these ficus. I'm always open to new and different ideas in bonsai. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below. Or if you would like to become a channel member, hit the join button. That way you get early access to new videos before they go out to everyone else. And you will get access to membership posts. If you would like to keep up to date with all the things that I do off YouTube, please follow me on Instagram. It's @NotionBonsai, and you can see all the things that I do on there. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.